big litmus test game. Syracuse and Rutgers coming up tomorrow at 2 p.m., and we are here to get you ready for it. It is our Rutgers preview on the Locked On Syracuse podcast.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, jacked up for this week. Tim Leonard, Tyler Aki here with you as always, wherever you get your podcasts. We're now on YouTube as well, so you can watch us there. We're going to be trying to release some bonus content on the YouTube page. I look
like Rob
as well.
Lowe right now with my hat. I've got my ACC football hat on right now. I'm protecting the shield here,
Rob
the ACC. Jim Phillips would be so proud of me right now.
Rob Lowe, that is a super deep cut to start out the podcast here. Well, we almost didn't even do the podcast at this normal time because you had a hiccup fit earlier.
Oh my God.
Right?
I've had chronic hiccups the last 2 days right now. I'm good right now. They'll probably flare up again in 2 hours. I'm wondering, is this an omen? Is this an omen? Is this the hiccup in the road for Syracuse's season? I got blamed for the loss against Houston in the NCAA tournament for my sister Jean tweet. Okay. I mean, I had people offering me jerseys and stuff like that in my messages and all that stuff, but I liked the tweet enough. So I left it up and the rest is history. Syracuse lost and I caught a lot of shade for it, but I stand by it. But maybe my hiccups, another omen for what's about to happen in the season. I can't control my hiccups. Okay. If you're telling me to try to get
2 days,
legit? They're off and on. They're off and on.
Okay.
So right now we're in a dry spell.
Someone, man. Yeah,
I don't know. But usually I feel like this happens with, I have no idea. My body is all over the place right now. So
that's even more concerning if it happens often. I'd get that checked out.
But I don't think I've had them in 2 years. I can't remember the last time I had them until yesterday. So,
the last time I had them, I was with you when we were in Pinehurst. I don't know if you remember this because I was like, I haven't had hiccups in 3 years. This is weird. And it was just because we scarfed down Cookout in 2.5 seconds, and that yielded it probably.
That'll do it. That'll do it.
Right. But all right, anyway, let's get into this football game. And by the way, if you are jacked up for the NFL season like we are, it is not too late to listen to the Ultimate Season Preview 2021 for previews of every team, every division from our local experts and Odyssey's NFL experts. Just search Ultimate Season Preview 2021 today on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Podcast Network, as always, has you covered with all the other sports as well. But Syracuse Rutgers, it's getting closer and closer. It feels like this is an even bigger game than Ohio, if that makes sense, even though Ohio was the opener. This is where we really find out about the Orange, maybe. Very positive vibes after the opener, but now we get a game in the Dome for the first time in 650 days, I think, with fans in attendance since the Trill Williams play, which is amazing. So a lot to digest this week, a lot of anticipation. And I feel like I'm very torn on which way this game is going to go the more I dig into Rutgers.
I look at it, you brought up Ohio. That was a big game for this team. Ohio sort of set the tone of the season, but this Rutgers game is what is going to really determine how much success this team is going to have. And those statements may sound a little bit similar, but if you lost that Ohio game, you have zero confidence heading into this Rutgers game.
Right.
If you beat this Rutgers team, even though they're a middle back third of the Big Ten team, these are games that Syracuse did not win a season ago. This game will show you that progress has been made. A, because you'll already have surpassed the win total from a season ago when they only came away with one in a 1-10 season. And B, this is a Power 5 team. You didn't beat a lot of Power 5 teams last year. So, and again, you haven't beat a lot of Power 5 teams really over the course of the last 2 years. The non-con has been a struggle for you against Power 5s. So this is a chance to really show that, okay, Dino Babers has something going here, and this team has taken a step in the right direction.
I feel like Rutgers and Syracuse are peers in a lot of ways. You got the New Jersey college team versus the New York college team. And I'm not saying normally, but in this scenario, where we are right now, Syracuse has more history probably, and obviously Syracuse is way better at basketball, and they're just a better athletic institution probably altogether. But when you look at just where the football programs are at, Rutgers is in this rebuilding stage where they've got some optimism, But this is a big game for Rutgers fans. Like, they're definitely nervous about this game because if they lose this game, they feel like it's a setback. If Syracuse loses this game in their quote-unquote rebuilding phase, which is weird to say because this is the 6th year under Dino Babers, but call it what you want. We're kind of in this phase where we're trying to figure out what we are and trying to get back to where we were. And this is a game that if Syracuse loses it, it's going to be like, man, that's a game we should win. It's at home against a team that, yeah, we're 2-point dogs right now on BetOnline.ag, but this is a winnable game for Syracuse, and it dictates the tone for the season, much like the Ohio game did in a lot of ways.
So my sophomore year roommate at Syracuse,
yes,
diehard Rutgers fan, diehard
really?
Rutgers fan. Longtime season ticket holder in the family. He took me up to a game one time, so I've been on the banks of the Raritan before. He's got amazing
it's the
seats.
First time I've ever heard that phrase. Is that a common phrase?
when he said, "Oh," he's like, "I'm a huge Rutgers." I was like, "Okay, like, yeah, you're probably a big Rutgers fan, whatever."
Sure.
Like, I didn't know those exist. Like, those are unicorns to me. But he's like, "No, like, I'm a big Rutgers fan." And he showed me this Rutgers shrine that he has in his room. And he's got like Kenny Britt jerseys, Jim Leonard, like the whole 9 year. I'm pretty sure he's got like 1 through 99 in his closet. I'm not even joking with you.
Wow.
But he texted
Ray Rice
me
is in there somewhere, maybe?
I think he's in there somewhere, yeah. But he texted me this morning. It's the McNella Bowl this weekend. I was like, oh, that's right. And I was like, who are you rooting for? Rutgers by far, but I think it's a huge trap game for them. So
wow, okay.
Here's my sophomore roommate's analysis of this game. All right. They should beat Cuse because Rutgers, in my mind, has a top 3 to 4 defense in the Big Ten. However, their offense is probably bottom 2 in the conference. Cuse stinks offensively. They have 0 pass game and will not run like that against Rutgers defense. Game will come down to Rutgers offensive line or Rutgers offense against Cuse defense. Who's going to win that battle? Also, it's a road game, first with fans under Schiano. I actually forecast a low-scoring game that Rutgers wins late on a Johnny Langan touchdown.
Oh,
so there's
really?
my roommate analysis there.
I like that because, when you see at first, and I talked about this earlier in the week, 61-14 last week, I was like, man, I'm scared about Rutgers offense. But then you actually watch the game, and I think he's right. Their defense might be better than their offense, which is weird after the score last week.
Oh, it's by far and away. And
yeah,
you got to give them credit because they capitalized on those opportunities, and we can get into some of the names here in a little bit, but bad teams don't capitalize always within the confines of field position. Like we saw last year, Syracuse got a lot of turnovers defensively, and it set up the offense in good field position, but you're kicking a lot of threes instead of scoring a lot of sixes, and that is a sign of a bad team that's not capitalizing. Rutgers capitalized. You can say, oh, well, they only start at the 20-yard line, like half their possessions. Yeah, okay, that happens. But guess what? They still made those opportunities turn into touchdowns as opposed to field goals for the most part.
Yeah, Anthony Dabbundo is going to join us for Dabundo's Digits, as he always does on our Friday pods or our preview pods here. And he does a great job breaking this down. So I don't want to spoil it too much, but that's the case, I think, against Syracuse this week is, yes, the defense didn't allow a touchdown last week, but Ohio also got into the red zone a fair bit, and the defense kind of did that thing where they bend, but they don't break, and that's been a huge talking point all throughout the week. We always hear that. It's true, though. The defense kind of got maybe a little bit of luck, maybe a little bit of good red zone defense, prevented touchdowns when they probably should have allowed a touchdown or two based on how well Ohio was moving the football. Even that first drive, they opt to kick the field goal when we've talked about probably a bad decision with that first-year kicker. The case now is, okay, Rutgers, maybe they're not going to move the ball consistently, but they're probably going to capitalize more than Ohio did. And was that last week Syracuse's red zone defense being elite, or was it Ohio just being that bad in the red zone?
I would guess it's more Ohio being bad in the red zone.
And there could be a mix of both.
First-year coach, it could be a mix of both. Like, Syracuse defensively, I think, was a lot better than I expected them to be, but Ohio was a lot worse offensively than I expected them to be. I look at these Rutgers running backs, too. That's been one of the things that, okay, this is going to be a sort of punch-in-the-mouth sort of Rutgers running attack, and they've got a good running quarterback with Noah Vidral, but the running backs from a week ago, not a lot that scares you, and again, a lot of short fields, so that's worth taking into account here, but Isaiah Pacheco, 2.5 yards per carry. His long on the afternoon was 7 yards, 14 carries for 40 yards.
But he does have some big playability. I think that's the thing with
all
Rutgers.
These guys
I'm not scared. I'm not scared of their offense. I'm scared of their potential big plays that could just make it that regardless of how we play defensively, they put up points based on like a 70-yard catch or a 45-yard screen pass or something.
And Syracuse's defense certainly is susceptible to the big plays. Like, as much as we lauded Deuce Chestnut for his performance in that opener against Ohio, he could just as easily give up a couple of big plays here. The hype and the energy of your first home game, you're playing against your hometown team. Right. All that stuff can work the other way at the flip of a hat, especially against a team that's probably a lot more talented in this Rutgers team than the Ohio program that they faced a week ago.
Right. All right. Well, let's put a pin in this conversation for just a second. We got the prop shop coming up. We got Dabbundo's digits. We will, of course, pick the game, but want to remind you guys about Built Bar, which is up to now 9 delicious flavors. There's something for everyone. And when you talk to a Built Bar fan like Tyler and I, they're definitely passionate about their faves. We love the peanut butter brownie. We also love double chocolate. There's a lot of really good ones in there. Coconut, cherry barcia, cookies and cream. You got German chocolate. If you are interested right now, you can do a mix box where you get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. Try them all out. See which ones are your favorite. And the best thing is they're delicious, but they're also healthy for you. 17 to 18 grams protein in most of these bars. Calories ranging from about 130 to 180. Only 4 to 5 grams sugar and only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. Amazing flavors, all tasty, all healthy. And if you order today, you get the grasshopper cookie or raspberry, or whatever you like. Built Bar is the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team. That's pretty cool. You can go to BuiltBar.com right now. Actually, go to Built.com right now, their new website, and use our promo code LOCKED15. It'll get you 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Again, that is Built.com for the best tasting protein bar out there. Before we get into the prop shop, I do want to talk a little bit more about just what you brought up there. And I think another thing to monitor in this game, and your roommate did a good job, or your old roommate, I should say, did a good job touching on this, is Syracuse going to be able to run the ball as good as they did last week? Because Rutgers on paper has a much better run defense, and Dabbundo's going to lay out some stats on that for us in a little bit, but they did a good job last year in the trenches. They're pretty good run defense-wise against the Big Ten, which has a lot of good running attacks. So what can we expect from Sean Tucker this week is going to be an interesting dynamic to this game as well.
Well, we brought it up yesterday. This Rutgers team, despite the fact that they only played 9 games, they were 11th in the country in total tackles for loss. That's in 9 games.
Yeah.
That's a team that lives in the backfield, going up against Big Ten offensive lines who do a good job at recruiting on that side of the ball and in that specific area in particular. So this is a Rutgers team that got after it. And top 3 or 4 defense in the Big Ten, you might have the defensive player of the year in the conference as well with Fadukasi, and you've got some supplementary help as well with Tyson Fogg. There's some really good run stuffers on this team. I don't expect Syracuse to go over 200 rushing yards like it did against Ohio.
Right.
I think it'll be a good day for Sean. If Sean Tucker gets over 100, then you're seeing someone that's really special. Yeah, I just don't know if he can get over 100 because of what's going to be thrown his way. And also Syracuse is probably going to find themselves in some more passing situations as well.
Well, actually, that's a prop shop question. So let's just get to that now while we're on the topic. Sean Tucker rushing yards this week, over under 82.5. I lean slightly under on that. And it's a pretty high over under, but I think you have to set it high, especially after last week. And the guy's gone past the century mark 4 of the 10 games he's played so far. So that's probably actually lower than his general average in the 10 games at Syracuse that he's been the main back. But I think it's going to be maybe in the 70-75 range this week.
Yeah, I'd go under as well. And it's not necessarily like he could still have upwards of 5 yards per carry in this game.
Yeah.
I just don't know if the rushing situations will be there as much. And we'll see. Does Dino want to try to operate with some more short passes, try to get DeVito a little bit of confidence in this game, or let DeVito run a little bit more too? That's another thing, that maybe you run it with a little more read option and DeVito will see a lot more contain on Sean Tucker as opposed to his own legs.
So the prop shop, for anyone that's new to the podcast, welcome. We do this every single preview episode before the game. And just recapping last week, you have the early advantage, Ty. After going 3-3, you were dead even, $0, won $0, lost last week. I went 2-4, so I'm in the red $200 after week 1.
Anyone that gambles knows that 0, it means you're up. It means you're up.
Yeah, that's huge. You're not in the red, which means you're not in the red. You're not quite in the green, but it's better than being in the red for sure. That's a big.
It's a
win
0 green. The zeros are green.
So you set this line, the attendance this week. That's going to be a hot topic. I feel like I'm glad you threw this in there. You put it at 33.5 thousand.
I'm willing to change that number. This was a late addition. I think I typed this in during segment 1. Okay, so
yeah, I was wondering when you put it in.
this is a late addition here. But if you want to move this number at all, let me know. I'm willing to change the number here to spark some sort of conversation.
Now, it feels, I don't know what to set it at. I mean, we talked about it in the week. Brent Axe tweeted out that photo, and it wasn't a glowing sort of review of how many fans are going to be there. I mean, I lean over, but maybe I'm
in 651 days. Like, seriously, people aren't going to show up for this? Teams want to know off a dominant performance?
It's such a, I mean, it's going to be a hassle to get. You got to get there early. You got to show your COVID test. You got to have the ticket on your phone, which might, I mean, that sounds so easy to us. Maybe that scares some people off. You can't pay cash at the concessions. Like, it just, I think if you're on the fence about this game, you're just not going because you're thinking, it's like still indoors. It's COVID. I have to wear a mask the whole game. Like, that's going to trim the fan base. If it was just straight up all go, COVID's doing well, I think it would shatter this number, but I'll lean over just because I'm optimistic. But I guess if you dug into the StubHub and stuff, it might not be over.
I'm looking here. We've got 79 degrees and partly cloudy. Is it apple picking season yet? I mean, that's a great apple picking. Is the State Fair
still open? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, 30. So we're leaving it at 33.5.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't even know what to set it at.
I'm gonna go. Wow, I think I set a really good number here. I'll go. I'll go. You know what, Orange fans, you need to show out for me here. Go over. All right. I think the angst of everything. People are gonna want to show up, and like
we also got to
across the country. Yeah, if you saw Camp Randall and Jump Around last weekend, and you don't want to go to a football game, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
right,
that looked
that's
awesome.
The announced over under too. So I think they're going to give us. I'm leaning on Syracuse athletics to give us a little bump there, a little cushion if we need it.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. This is the obligatory Garrett Schrader question. I think we did all right. Actually, I missed both of the Garrett Schrader questions last week. I was expecting a little bit more playing time. You had him last week. Last week, we had 2.5 offensive drives for Schrader in the first game. This week, we changed the question, and I'm also open to altering this line in the process here, too, because I was pretty unsure how to word this. But will Garrett Schrader play a meaningful drive is what I've settled on. Even odds for that. I think it's a yes, and I do want to emphasize drive there. I want to say that if he comes in for a spot play in the red zone, and it's just a couple snaps, it has to be like he starts the drive on the 20 or whatever, and he's out there for the duration. At least like he is out there and designed to be the quarterback for the drive. And I think we can have some leeway, but meaningful, we get the idea. Like, it's not garbage time like last week.
Right. Okay, so I think every drive in this game is going to be meaningful because I think the game is going to be close enough where every single drive is going to be, you're going to be within 2 possessions probably for the bulk of the game, both ways. But that's an interesting twist. So if he only comes in for like a red zone sort of package,
I mean, what do you think? I think he's definitely going to do that. So I feel like that'd be easy money.
Yeah, I think he's going to play, especially with some of these linebackers. You want a quarterback who's more of a dual threat sort of guy out there so you can run some read option stuff, maybe some RPOs out of it as well. And I think Garrett Schrader's a little more equipped to do that, even though Tommy did show some nice stuff with his legs a week ago against Ohio. I'm just afraid the game might speed up a little bit. He might take a big hit at a certain point. Yeah. And I'm not saying he's going to get injured necessarily because of it, but it might change the way that he utilizes his legs. As for a meaningful drive, start to finish, I'm going to say no, but I don't think that's going to take away from his ability to sort of make an impact in the game. Like,
right.
if he goes down and plays in a red zone series, like they get a first down to like the 7, and Garrett Schrader comes in, that's making an impact on the game. And that's sort of what Syracuse fans, I think, are waiting for with Garrett Schrader.
He could score a touchdown and not hit.
He certainly could.
Yeah. So that's why I'm going under still. But I think I could see him playing a drive. I mean, it really comes down to, is Tommy going to be bad or good? And I lean that he'll be good enough to stay on the field as the starting QB for all the meaningful drives. All right, next one, over under 2.5 SU sacks allowed. We put this one last week. We both hit the under because it was just one allowed. Rutgers, decent in terms of getting to the quarterback last year, 21 sacks in 9 games. So I'll say under, just because I think the offensive line did show improvement last week. It's going to be interesting. This is a much tougher test. It's a good number here. I would guess that Rutgers sacks DeVito twice, but I also feel like DeVito's just going to do everything he can to get rid of the ball and keep those sack numbers down as well.
I think there will be a little more throwing in this game from Syracuse.
Yeah,
so
good point.
I still think it's going to be a run-heavy offense, but you're going to see, I think, more than 18 throws this time, or 17 throws, whatever the number was from a week ago. So I'm going to actually go over here on this. I just think that the step up in class against the defense that Syracuse is going up against in this matchup is going to pose some problems for this offensive line. They had a soft little beginning, and they played well, deserve a lot of credit for playing well, but I think with this matchup against Rutgers, better line play on the other side, I think it's going to be, you're going to see Tommy get taken to the ground quite a few times. So I'm going to take the over.
All right, quickly for our last kind of prop shot before we pick the game and the spread and the over-under. First Syracuse touchdown, it's Sean Tucker plus 120, Taj Harris plus 225, Cooper Lutz plus 350, Jarb Howard drops down to plus 375, Quealy plus 475, a DeVito run, which was the first TD last week, plus 500 odds. Schrader run plus 600. Benson TD plus 650. Any other TD, including defensive TD, plus 700. I'll just play the odds. I'm going to take Sean Tucker. I think he scores at some point, and at plus 120, I'll take that for the first touchdown.
I think the first touchdown that this team scores against Rutgers is going to come through the air. And something that I saw in a play that I think can develop into a touchdown scoring play occurred with Anthony Quealy. And the way that he navigates over the middle of the field on some of those post routes, I think DeVito and Quealy are going to hook up for the first dome touchdown of the year. So give me Anthony Quealy on that.
I'm going to be very upset if that happens because I took him last week and it didn't come through. But so it's going to happen now. All right, let's take a quick break here, and then we will jump into our odds and pick the spread from BetOnline.ag. Want to tell you guys about StatHero. Do you know 85% of people who play daily fantasy sports lose? It is really that tough. The game is rigged against you. You're playing against thousands of other lineups, not to mention experts who have more tools and more time. You don't stand a chance, but now you do with StatHero. It's the first ever daily fantasy sportsbook that puts the players in control and winning within reach. Here's how it works. StatHero shows you their lineups and dares you to beat them. It's you versus the house in a head-to-head fantasy matchup. Your game, you name the stakes, winner take all. You have the advantage. StatHero is showing you their lineups ahead of time. No one else does that. I've actually dipped into StatHero more and more in the past couple weeks. It's a lot more fun to be able to see, oh, I don't think that guy is going to have a good game, so I'll go against him. It's nice to be able to pick the lineup. It's a big
StatHero weekend, too.
Yes, right. You are in
NFL back. It's StatHero weekend.
DFS NFL is pretty fun. I'll say that. It's probably the best sport. I love doing the golf stuff, but DFS NFL is always fun, especially when your fantasy team stinks and it's like week 7 and you're just looking for a little skin in the game. StatHero might be the play for you guys now. You're in total control. StatHero is DFS the way it was meant to be, one-on-one. You can play StatHero now and change the odds. Just go to stathero.com/lockedon. Sign up for free right now. You get 3 times back on your first play. Again, they're giving you 300% match. That's unheard of. So go to stathero.com/lockedon. Again, that is stathero.com/lockedon. All right, the time we've been waiting for. We're ready to pick this matchup. Looking at betonline.ag. Now, this line moved a lot on Saturday last time, but this is us recording Thursday afternoon. We are seeing +2 right now for Syracuse. They are slight underdogs by 2 points. why don't you start? Because I have been incredibly torn, like maybe the most torn I've ever been on picking a Syracuse football game on this podcast. I really just feel like this game could go a number of different ways.
Yeah, I'm leaning on the side of Rutgers here as a road favorite. And I think they're going to do a better job defensively. Like this could be one of those games where Syracuse only comes away with 13 points or something, maybe even less than that. I just think this Rutgers defense is that good. You've got a lot of really, really talented players on that side of the ball. I think it's going to be low scoring as well. I mean, the total set at 51.5, two teams that like to run the ball as well. So I think this could be a very low scoring game. So give me Rutgers minus the 2, and I'll also take the under of 51.5 as well. And think about the special teams in this game too. That's going to be critical because the Scarlet Knights have a very, very talented punt returner, kick returner, and Aaron Cruikshank. I mean, a week ago, 45-yard punt return, a 57-yard kickoff return. Now, Trevor Pena was great for Syracuse on the other side as well. So that's worth noting. I think special teams is going to play a lot larger role in this game than maybe some people are anticipating.
So I went on ESPN Syracuse, I think on Tuesday early in the week. I said I'm leaning Syracuse. I dug into it more. I know fans are going to hate me, but I think I'm leaning Rutgers right now.
Oh,
and the tiebreaker, I know. The tiebreaker for me, I feel like Rutgers could run away from Syracuse in this game. They could just get the big plays to go their way. The tackling could rear its ugly head. They could get some pressure on DeVito. I think they just have a little bit more pop. I do like that Syracuse has the home crowd on their side. I think they've got a legit shot of winning this game. I just feel like Rutgers has a little bit more going for them in terms of their offense, which is weird because their offense is not good, but it has that big playability. And some of those guys you mentioned, like Cruikshank, even Pacheco, the running, like they scare me a little bit. I think they could get out in the open field and make plays.
Here's what I'm doing here, okay? I'm pulling out the yellow legal pad, okay? And I'm going to start checking some boxes here. Offense, defense, special teams, and then coaching.
Okay.
Offense, I think, is pretty even, right? Like, neither team wows you.
Yeah.
Maybe a slight edge Syracuse in terms of consistency, but in terms of home run hitting ability, maybe a slight edge Rutgers there. But I think everything pretty even across the ledger from an offensive standpoint. When you move to defense, I think there's a pretty clear advantage. I think Rutgers is the much better defensive team. And they've got much better players. They've got really, really strong linebacking core.
Yeah.
I'd give
but so much of that is turnovers, right? Like if they don't get forced turnovers, they're not that good. I mean, they allowed a lot of points in Big Ten play last year.
The tackles for loss in the backfield as well. And I think against this Syracuse offensive line, that is something that could loom large. If you're shutting down Syracuse's running game, you're probably not getting much offensively. Special teams, probably a slight edge Rutgers as well with Cruikshank, and I think a more stable, more knowns in the punting game as well. Again, this could be a game where there's a lot of punts on both sides. James Williams, his first game against a real test and a punt returner like Cruikshank, that could be a factor to look out for. And then coaching, I just think Greg Schiano is the better X's and O's guys. He's got an upper hand recruiting wise too. In that way, I've got 3 boxes checked on the Rutgers side and an even across the board offensively.
Right. And you think Syracuse could win the game. Like I think
they could.
Be close. Yeah.
Listen, this game could come down to 1 or 2 big plays. It might come down to who makes the big throw in the big moment. Is it going to be Noah Vidral or is it going to be Tommy DeVito? It could come down to the home run hitting. I mean, Syracuse, they've got home run hitters on their side too. Taj Harris could bust off a big play.
Right.
I mean, we've heard all this stuff about Cooper Lutz. Does he make a big play? All these different factors go into it. I just lean with more of the Rutgers. I think this game is going to have a lot to be said on the defensive side of the ball, and I think Rutgers has the better defense. Yeah,
and it's weird because DeVito, a home run play, like he can actually throw a deep. Vidral, I don't really think he scares me too much, but it's when he dumps it off to Melton in the right spot and then he breaks some tackles and all that kind of gets out of hand. I'll take the over. You went under, right? I'll
went
take
under.
The other side of you there. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. But before we get out of here, one of the favorite parts of the week, we got to kick it to our guy, Anthony Dabbundo, for Dabundo's Digits.
The numbers you need to know. Anthony Dabbundo breaks down the biggest stats for this week's Syracuse matchup. Everybody! Dabundo's Digits. If you ain't taking stats, get the out the class. On the Locked On Syracuse Podcast.
All the stat-aholics, where you at? Let's go. Fans are returning to the Carrier Dome for the first football game since November of 2019. That's 651 days since Trill Williams ended the season on a walk-off fumble strip 6. That's the digit of the week. Hope everyone attending the game enjoys it on Saturday. I'm excited to see the Dome full yet again. Rutgers had a really impressive win against Temple in its first game, but it was the beneficiary of some terrible Temple mistakes. The Scarlet Knights' average starting field position was at their own 48, thanks to all the Temple turnovers in their own half on Saturday. Rutgers does deserve some credit for turning opportunities into points. They had 10 trips inside the opponent 40, scored 52 points from those chances. That's 5.2 points per opportunity. The offense also improved as the game went on, but it wasn't all that impressive when you look at the success rate. They improved from 40% in the first quarter to 45% in the second to 50% in the third. Only the last one was actually above the national average against a pretty bad Temple defense. I don't think one game against a flailing Temple team is particularly indicative of how good Rutgers is. We simply just don't know yet. We do know is that last week we talked about Syracuse staying ahead of the chains and the importance of that against Ohio. They had a 71% success rate on standard downs, which is first and second down. That is higher than any game in 2020 and 25% higher than the national average from week 1 of the season. Once again, always beware one-game samples against what appears to be a pretty bad Ohio team, but the Orange's stuff rate offensively was less than half of the national average too, preventing those negative run plays. Sean Tucker had a lot to do with that. He broke off 9 runs of 12 yards or more, as Syracuse averaged 7.24 yards per play on first down. That'll always play. Rutgers has a better defense than Ohio, though, especially on the front line. Rutgers ranked inside the top 40 last season in power success rate defensively, in defensive line yards, and in stuff rate. They have a lot of returning production on that same front line. The Orange's O-line bullies Rutgers like they bullied Ohio. I'll be extremely impressed. The Scarlet Knights returned 20 starters from last year's team, including star player Olakunle Fatukasi, who had 3 sacks against Temple. The Orange only allowed 1 sack in their first game. Something's got to give there. That's a huge matchup to watch along the trenches. Where I think this game will be decided is that Syracuse offensive line against the Rutgers stingy defensive line. Rutgers played an all Big Ten schedule last year, which can hurt its overall numbers, but it wasn't exactly a great offense. Part of that was multiple quarterbacks that featured throughout the year. Scarlet Knights were below average in both rushing and passing success rate last year, but they did find explosive plays, especially on the ground, where they ranked in the top 40 in rushing explosiveness. It's another big key for Syracuse's defense to prevent explosive plays, especially on the ground. Dino Babers commented on how the Rutgers Scarlet Knights have plenty of team speed, much more than Ohio did, and that will be the challenge for the SU back 7 to prevent those explosive plays. The Orange won the game by 20 last week, in part because of their red zone and finishing drives defense. Ohio did manage to get the ball inside the Syracuse 40 on 6 separate occasions. Could be a little bit concerning, but they only scored 9 points, 3 field goals. That's 1.5 points per possession inside the opponent 40. That's a big situation here where Rutgers scored 5.2 points per possession on offense. Syracuse defense holding opponents to 1.5 points. That's the other area where I'm looking for this matchup. Syracuse's red zone defense and Syracuse's offensive line against the Rutgers defensive line are where this game is likely to be decided.
All right, thanks to Anthony Dabbundo. As always, go follow him on Twitter at Anthony Dabbundo. Just got started with his new gig at the Action Network, so you get all his betting odds, numbers, busy, digits.
He's doing like MLB picks, I think was what he was doing before he hopped on and did that. And I mean, the kid's grinding. He's got great picks too. And you can follow him on the Action Network.
3.5 minutes this week. I mean, that was some really good stuff this week for him. And he doesn't have to do that. So we appreciate it, as always, from Anthony Dabbundo. We appreciate you guys listening all week, if you have, or if you just popped in for this episode, we appreciate you as well. We're not going to discriminate against loyal listeners or non-loyal listeners, but we welcome all kinds of listeners.
Before we get out of here, I do want to mention this, okay? Best thing I saw all week, all right? It's a headline from Syracuse.com, from the Syracuse football Twitter account. Without Chris Elmore against Ohio, Syracuse turned to the next member of its tight end animal kingdom, expanding the role of Max Mang, the Berlin Bear. How about that? I mean, the creativity. I mean, the Berlin Bear, the latest member of SU football's animal kingdom. Of course, Chris Elmore known as the Rhino.
Out. Yeah.
And then Max Mang, the Berlin Bear. This is a big game for Max Mang. If he can chip a couple blocks on those linebackers and create some running lanes, this is going to be a big test. And I'm not saying that he's going to Wally Pip Chris Elmore, because I think you could utilize a 2 tight end set with both of those guys as blockers, especially in goal line situations. But that changes the way, if Max Mang plays really well in this game, it's going to change the way I think about how Syracuse is going to run the football for the duration of the season.
Yeah. Wally Pip, another good reference there from you. Another deep cut on the podcast. All right. Well, we will cut it there. Excited for this one. Follow our tweets. We'll be giving you guys updates throughout the game at LO_Syracuse. And we'll talk to you guys on Monday.